Hello and welcome to the video. In this video we will look at two fantastic chess games played, well, in different eras. One was played yesterday between Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Anish Giri. Duda from Poland, and the other game was played in 1929 between Glucksberg and Najdorf. At that time he was playing for Poland, I believe. Later he moved to Argentina and had to stay there. But we will debate which one deserves the title the Polish Immortal, and I will leave that decision up to you. But first, let's look at the games, and let's start with the game Jan-Krzysztof Duda against Anish Giri. This was played at the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour finals. The players usually play a 4-game mini-match, rapid games, and I believe this was the third game between Duda and Giri. We open up with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, very topical at the top levels, and people tend to go for knight f3 here, not allowing the nimso after knight to c3, and after knight f3, d5 is what they play, and after knight c3, bishop b4, and we have the Ragozin. White takes on d5. They already played the Ragozin in the first match, and I believe Giri went for h6 there, but here he goes for knight b to d7, which is the second most popular move. Rook c1 was played, and as often happens in these lines, black pushes h6 and g5 and plays knight e4. Puts a lot of pressure on this knight on c3, and also in some cases tries to make this bishop bad or chop it off. Queen b3 was played. Now this position has not been reached too many times. There are some games with knight d2, but queen b3 I believe is a new move. I might just double check that. Actually, we have a few games here. So queen b3 was played, bishop takes c3, b takes e3. Yeah, now the first new move, knight to b6 by Anish. e3 now by Duda, and h5. And as we can see, h5 is kind of threatening to trap this bishop, to play h4, and if bishop e5, we will play f6. Let's give this bishop a proper way to go to e5. But Duda simply ignores this, and he plays c4. Giri goes ahead, he traps the bishop, h4, bishop to e5, and f6. So now the bishop is trapped. I'm sure Duda saw this because, well, these guys are pretty good. Obviously he saw this idea, but he intended here to sacrifice a piece. He takes on d5, and Giri takes the piece. F takes e5. White throws in this check, and the king has to move. King to f8. If we interpose on d7, we take on e5, and there's no longer, I guess, this pressure on d5. So king f8, knight takes e5. And now, yeah, we have this mutual fork situation. White is threatening immediately to fork here on g6. So that's why king g7 was played. And white can't castle immediately because of knight e2. Note that black probably, at least according to the computer, in this complicated position, probably should have just taken on d5, allowed this, and then play with the two pieces against the rook and, well, a bunch of pawns now. But king g7 was played. And this allows bishop d3, and now the knight has to move. The knight went to d6, and now there's no longer this threat of the knight jumping to d2, so now Duda can castle. So as compensation for the piece, we have, well, much better development, a much better king, a safe king against an isolated king, and, well, well-placed pieces, and a very strong center coming up. Giri played g4, and now f4 makes sense. We're trying to target this king here in the center of the board. Rook f8, Giri figures that, taking on f3 should be relatively suicidal. I guess we take with the rook and then double the rooks. Even take with the pawn, king h1, rook g1 comes into consideration. I think both options are viable, but Giri doesn't allow it, plays rook f8, and now e4. If given time, black will play bishop f5 here, then maybe take over the e4 square, and from there he can try to win this pawn. And then things are starting to look different, but fortunately for white, he can play e4 and has a massive center here. Absolutely massive center. Controlling a lot of squares, taking away squares from the knights and taking away squares from the bishop. So white actually has a pretty significant advantage here. Now g3 is played. Now very often we will play h3 in such situations, but I guess we would only play it if it was black who was attacking. We would want to keep it closed, but here we are the ones attacking, so we really don't care if black tries to open things up. We play f5. Now we see we open the path for the queen here on this diagonal right here. If it were to reach the e3 square, for instance, a knight on g6 could look fantastic in many lines. Giri decides to play queen g5, giving up the pawn on c7, but I think his position was already starting to look pretty grim. Now, I guess the only idea here is to give a check and win this pawn, so Duda simply protects that. There's no queen e3, queen d2, and now queen f3, preparing to swing the queen over and take advantage of this weakened king right here. Giri tries to, well, get some pieces active, so he just gives up the bishop to activate the rook, takes the pawn on d4 with check, and king h1. Now the problem is, as shown here, if you take the knight, it's going to be a check on g4, then check on h7, and check on, h5, and then h7, checkmate. So the knight can't be taken, so rook 8 to c8 was the move that was played. But here, Duda found a fantastic win. He is winning virtually by any move, to be honest. A move such as rook e7 wins, a move such as rook h7 wins. But the move that Duda played is actually a forced mate. I believe made in something like 11 by force. And it's a very nice line. If you haven't seen it, try to figure it out. It's white to move and it's forced mate. It's beautiful. And Duda found it. So assuming you took the time, you've come back here and you want to see the solution, see if you got it. If you played on the first move rook to g7, you were absolutely correct. And this is something we should look at if we go by the forcing moves. You know, checks, captures, threats. We look at the forcing moves, rook g7. Very forcing. The king has a take, and now f6. And now the king has three choices. It can come forward, it can go backwards, or, well, go backwards in two ways. So I guess we should first take care of king to g8. Well, actually, let's first take care of king to h8, which is the easy one. Queen h5, queen h7, checkmate. What about king g8? Slightly more complicated, but should be easy. Bishop h7, check. If king takes, the queen comes in like we saw here and here. So king h8, but now we have knight g6. And again, we play the most forcing move, Czechoslovakia, and checkmate. Beautiful lines. But the king can go upwards, onwards and upwards, king h6, and that's what Giri played. But now the only winning move for white, and that's what Duda played, knight to g4. King has to come forward. And now the beautiful sequence. And again, the only winning move, queen to f5 check, giving up the queen. So white is giving up a lot of stuff. We can give up the queen, and we can even give up the knight. King g6 is the most resilient, but this is actually the nicest mate, and perhaps Giri should have allowed this h3. This would have been a fitting ending to this game. Instead, he played king g6 and resigned after rook e5. And the only thing that black can do here is postpone the mate with the rook and then the queen. And at the end of the day, he has to play king f7, and then the final blow is quite easy. Rook e7 check, knight h6 check, and rook h7 checkmate. An absolutely beautiful finish, a very nice game. First a piece sacrifice in the opening, and then the final sequence is absolutely fantastic. So this was the game played yesterday. Now we are going to move back in time, all the way back to 1929 in Warsaw, Poland. Glucksberg with white and Najdorf opens with f5. He always played the Sicilian, the Najdorf variation is named after him. This is kind of the Najdorf, well, the Sicilian on the king side, if you will, the Dutch. c4, knight f6, and Najdorf plays the stonewall attack. Well, it's stonewall attack with white. It's stonewall defense, I believe, with black. So he's playing the stonewall, which is this pawn structure right here, which gives some aggressive options, but also gives up this square right here. Bishop d3, bishop d6, castles, castles, and knight e2. Najdorf brought the knight out, knight b to d7. And now a move that I don't think we would see a lot of people play these days. White played knight into g5. Now, probably the situation here is that Glucksberg is playing somebody well-known, Najdorf, strong player, and he's hoping for something like queen e7, protecting the attacked pawn on e6, and then he wants to play something like f4, trying to keep it closed, you know, then bring the knight back, and he gets this square, black gets this one, and he's hoping the situation is balanced. The problem is, after knight g5, and Najdorf can play, and he did play bishop takes h2. Now maybe white saw this. He played king h1. And still, we have this threat right here. And if we were to protect it with queen e7, then maybe g3, and we can start picking up this guy at some point. Najdorf played knight g4 instead. Now if you take on e6, queen h4, it's not looking pretty. So f4 is played. But now queen e8, the queen wants to come in here. And maybe this is what white envisioned, you know, g3, queen h5, king g2. And he thought, I'll play here, and I don't know, knight f3, and just win this guy. If I win this guy, I win a piece, I win the game. But this is where the magic started to happen. Now, a move like this looks tempting, intending to come in with the queen to h2, but I guess white could defend with rook h1, and we'd have to put something back on h2, and I'm guessing something like knight f3, and we actually win this guy. Something like this should be working for white. So that's why Najdorf played bishop g1, which stops the rook from coming to h1, but still has the same idea of queen h2. Now we can dismiss the move rook g1, because we will just move the queen in and give mate, both if the king is on f3 or f1. So knight takes g1 was played in the game by Glucksberg. Queen came in, king f3, absolutely forced. And now it looks like we are lacking the ammunition to finish the job here. We sacrificed a piece and we need something more. But something more is exactly what Najdorf found here. He played e5. And I guess to demonstrate the threat, we should play something, well, some nothing move like queen e2. Then we play e4. White can only capture here. Actually, he could capture with a knight, but he gets mated. But something like this. No, actually, it doesn't really matter. We take with this. We take here. Sorry, we take with this pawn. And at the end of the day, okay, if you take here, king here, knight e5, h6 is mate. And if you take like this, the knight drops back to e5, and it is mate. So white can't do nothing. Yeah, and I can show you if this has to be made somehow. Double check, and then h6 I guess is made, right? Yeah, or not to lose anything. So this is the threat. So after e5, Glucksberg took on e5, but now we get rid of this kind of redundant knight and open up for the bishop. Knight takes e5, f takes, and knight takes. King is still alive, king f4, and it's kind of only being attacked by the knight, knight g6. So here, if Najdorf wants, and maybe he thought about it, he can give a perpetual. Why can't I do this? Here, he has a perpetual if he wants. Knight e5, king f4, knight back to g6, draw. So at least he had the draw in the backhand. But of course he wanted more. He wanted the Polish Immortal. He played f4. The main idea here is that by pushing the pawn to f4, we are taking away the f4 square. It's not protected by the rook, the pawn, so we are threatening to play knight into e5, which would be mate. For instance, yeah, if you do nothing, 95, and if we take with the g-pawn, we use the same pin as before, and this is actually checkmate. So, after f4, we can add that bishop takes g6 is probably met with f takes g3, and I don't see anything other than bishop here, but that should end in mate, well, similar mate that happened in the game, so we'll not spoil that. So e takes f4 was played, and this opens up the e3 square for the king. But here it comes in handy that we gave up one of the knights and we activated this bishop, because now we have sort of the final blow, bishop to g4. We're giving up a lot of material, but we are winning here. So king e3 results in something like bishop takes d1, rook takes d1, and if we want to keep playing in a beautiful way, we'll play rook takes f4. If pawn takes, jack, king e2, rook e8, and at the end of the day, d takes e4, and the threats are too big, taking this guy, giving this jack, winning this guy. So black wins. Fortunately, after bishop g4, Glucksberg played in the correct manner. He allowed the nice finish. He played king takes g4, which does allow knight e5, giving up yet another minor piece. We are down 4 minor pieces in this position. 4! But we have the absolutely beautiful h5 here, which is checkmate. And this is the current Polish Immortal played by Najdorf. So I ask you, which is the proper Polish Immortal? Is it Najdorf's very clinical win, played against maybe, I don't know, somewhat inferior opposition? Or is it Jan-Krzysztof Duda with a modern game against a very strong opponent, piece sacrifice, and then a very beautiful and forcing mating sequence? You'll be the judge. Tell me in the comments. See you soon with an opening video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.